Hello, I'm Dipto, a third-year information science PhD student at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm going to present a paper that I wrote with my advisor, Bryan Semaan. In this paper, we explore how South Asian Bengalis on the platform Bengali Quora engage in collaborative identity decolonization work through reclaiming narrative agency. The Indian subcontinent, where the Bengali people are native to, has a long history of colonialism. The Bengali people, now in most part, live in Bangladesh and some Indian states with sizable number of people living in Pakistan. As the question answering site Quora launched a Bengali forum, users from this region have been joining the platform in greater number. Users on Bengali Quora discuss their everyday experience with colonialism. For example, a user shared their observation a nurse called a female doctor Apa, which means sister in Bengali. That's why the doctor slapped the nurse and asked to be addressed as madam. The user asked others on the platform if they think addressing someone as Apa is less respectable than addressing someone as madam. They concluded with the question, do the colonial influences remain in the minds of the people? In response, another user shared their experience by saying a teacher in their college told them to respond in English, saying yes sir, while taking attendance record instead of saying Bengali phrases like uposthit, which means present. After sharing this experience, the user commented that many people find pleasure in using English words while speaking. If this is not a colonial effect, then it's mental decay. These examples of what one can say and cannot say being determined by others bring us to one of the key concepts of our paper, narrative agency. When we think about narrative agency, it refers to people having voice in shaping their own histories, societies, and identities. As we are discussing the relationship between narrative agency with colonialism, it's important to ask, what is colonization? Colonization is a process through which foreign forces migrate to other regions and impose their values and perspectives on the social structures of the local and indigenous communities. Colonizing practices have taken away people's narrative agency around the world. In this work, we are particularly interested in how people engage in decolonizing work. Specifically, we focus on decolonization with respect to how people are reclaiming narrative agency. According to decolonial scholars, local and indigenous communities taking ownership of narratives is one of the most crucial objectives of decolonization. To explore this, we draw on Poka Laenui's framework on processes of decolonization. According to Laenui, in the first phase, rediscovery and recovery, people who have experienced colonization suffer from the concepts of inferiority. This phase drives one to rediscover their history and recover their culture, language, and identity, and thus is fundamental to the process of decolonization. The second phase, mourning, is a period where a colonized population laments their victimization. Considering colonialism as a long-term trauma, mourning becomes an essential phase of healing. Laenui states that the third phase of this process, dreaming, is the most crucial for decolonization, where the broader picture of possibilities is constructed, expressed, and considered for a new social, cultural, and political order through debate, consultation, and discourse. After exploring the panorama of possibilities in the dreaming phase, in the fourth stage, known as commitment, people have to be committed to moving in a direction that culminates in people combining their voices in a clear statement of their desired socio-political structure. The fifth and final stage of decolonization process is called action. This can incorporate a wide range of activities. As the decolonization environment has drastically changed in the past few decades, Laenui emphasized the effectiveness of media in executing the planned actions. To understand how these stages of decolonization manifest in the discussions among the users of Bengali Quora, we used a trace ethnography approach in this study, which combines the richness of participant observation and the wealth of data to reconstruct patterns and practices of the users in distributed socio-technical systems such as Quora. We collected Q&A threads data from Quora, translated and anonymized them. For data collection, we purposefully sampled Q&A threads using a list of keywords covering different concepts, important events, figures, places, and ideologies relevant to the colonial history of the region. From a socio-material perspective, the list of search phrases can also reflect our socio-historical understanding of the context as researchers. Therefore, as form of snowball sampling, we also included the related Q&A threads suggested by the Quora recommendation algorithm. We adopted a dual inductive and deductive approach for data analysis. After inductively generating open codes from the data, we used Poka Laenui's framework to organize our findings, which led us to map Bengali Quora user strategies to decolonization with different stages of Laenui's framework in the following manner. We see some users on Quora to echo the colonial narrative of colonialism to be a civilizing mission. By representing themselves as inferior to the colonizers, they exhibit the transgenerational domination of colonial narrative on their minds. In the rediscovery and recovery phase, other users criticize such colonial mentality. They motivate the former group of users to see the oppressive reality of colonialism. Thus, through collaborative efforts, they conceptualize the impacts of colonialism in their everyday lives and challenge the dominant assumptive narrative to work towards healing from collective colonial trauma. In continuation of the healing process, the users mourn about their colonial past. While doing so, they engage in speculative discussions like how the subcontinent would have looked like if they were never colonized, or if the British never left the region. Through those discussions, they highlight the impacts of colonialism on their regional socio-cultural, political, and economic structures, as well as identify their indigenous selves. Reflecting on their identity and history, the users become aware of how the harmful geopolitical structures of the region have been colonially institutionalized through policies like divide and rule. In the dreaming phase, to break out of colonial influence, the users explore different possibilities to revise and reform the economic, political, and other social structures of the modern-day nation-states. In this process, the users identify the categorical dimensions of identity to be divisive and impeding the process of unity. In their discussions, users have looked closely whether they identify as Hindu, Muslim, Bangladeshi, Indian, or Bengali. They have pushed for anti-categorical fluid ways of perceiving themselves. Recognizing the multidimensionality of their identity, they have encouraged each other to commit to their commonality as Bengali people for working towards decolonization. In the final stage of decolonization on this platform, the discussions lead to call for actions. Here, the users articulated their demands like increasing cultural exchange, mutual economic transactions, and easier immigration policies within their region. We discuss how narratives serve to help people bounce back from threats or vulnerability, a concept we dub narrative resilience. We also explain how the conversations on Quora manifest socio-material changes beyond the boundary of the online platform into the society through a lens that we call post-colonial socio-materiality. Describing colonialism as a long-running normalized invisible crisis, we have shown how our study has implications for the broader field of crisis informatics. In doing so, we argue that our study has potential implications for future scholarships around decolonization that extends multiple ongoing discussions around ICT for development, social justice, decolonial HCI, and identity research within the CHI community. Thank you for your attention.